Continued unrest in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. Is Mr. Trump's opinion far-fetched, Tammy? What do you think?
Well, if you notice, that was Chuck Todd who suggested the position, and Mr. Trump agreed with it. Look, the reason we're in the position we're in the Middle East right now is because we were not efficient. Obama abandoned that region. It's almost as though both he and Mr. Obama want to pretend that the last 7 years didn't happen, when there was many things that we could have done in order to, of course, balance that region. By abandoning the region, by negating U.S. power, that's been the problem. Look, fascism is more efficient. And you can point to Mussolini or Gadhafi or Hussein and say it would have been easier and more efficient and quieter. But America likes, and the world likes, freedom and democracy and individual rights. That's worth fighting for, and that's what Obama abandoned.
You know, here's the thing, Jessica. There was no ISIS. There was no refugee crisis in 2008. We're talking 2008. Setting aside whether or not you were for or against the Iraq War. By the way, the national intelligence estimates had 90% certainty that Iraq did have WMDs, and John Kerry, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Clinton, and Harry Reid all voted for the Iraq War. Setting all that aside, do you agree with Mr. Trump that it's better to have a dictator in there to keep the Middle East quiet?
I don't fundamentally. I think Tammy put it really beautifully, that this isn't what we're about as a nation. We're about democracy and freedom. And obviously, we've mishandled the foreign policy situation in a lot of ways throughout the Obama's time in office. But I don't believe that we're ever better off with a dictator. And I think that what is good here is that Donald Trump, though, is making his foreign policy positions clear, even if he is being fed them by Chuck Todd.
That's interesting. Steve, what do you think of Mr. Trump, what he said?
Well, what he's looking at is what's happened after 2008. In terms of dictatorships, Egypt has a dictatorship now, which is very popular. General Sisi, who threw out the Muslim Brotherhood, which is what people wanted. So you're having a strong man doesn't mean he has to be a bad strong man. Saddam Hussein was bad. We threw that victory away in 2009. Obama miserably made worse what happened in Syria.
So do you disagree with Donald Trump?
Yes, in the sense that we can't ignore the Middle East, because if it blows up, you have refugees, you have terrorism, you have nuclear weapons. We can't ignore it. It's not Fortress America.
And Steve and Tammy, Saddam Hussein was gassing, using chemical warfare on Iranians and the Kurds, right?
Yeah, look, so you have an immediate moral obligation, frankly, we do, being the greatest country on earth. And then just look around the world now. You see what the results are with this hands-off, surrendering kind of position. And look, it's horrible to be the best country in the world in some ways, and of course it's lovely. But we have a responsibility. We've got to use it properly and efficiently.
I'll tell you something. Here's the thing. Pakistan, Nigeria, both moving toward religious tolerance in the 90s, and then both put on the rack of extremism by Islamic terrorists. I mean, both of those countries. So it can be done. But to Steve's point, Jessica, is which dictator do you want?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the time and circumstances are what dictate where you go in and when you do it. But to what Tammy was just discussing, you need to pick a strategy and you need to follow through with it. And I think that being consistent is important. And also, Donald Trump, though, is raising this issue of America as the world's policeman. And this has been a hot topic for the past few years, certainly as Obama has scaled our actions abroad back. And I think that it's really, really smart of Donald Trump to be talking about it.
But left a vacuum? What do you think, Steve?
Can't leave a vacuum. The follow-up question should have been, what do we do now? It's fine to say we shouldn't have done this, we should have done that. Where do we go from here? Is he going to abandon the Middle East? Are we going to abandon the Middle East?
That's what he says. Leave Putin to it.
And what would be the consequences? Iran getting the bomb, what would be the consequences? What would South Korea do? What would Egypt, Turkey do? What would be the consequences of that? You follow through and you see what actually happens. You just can't say, get out.
And, the Democrats would have an edge. It's that if Hillary was just saying what Jessica was saying, she'd be in a much better position when it comes to where she stands on the
Interesting point.